made it.
Yeah, we're a little late, a little technical problems, and hopefully none of those major attacks by the enemy. But it looks like it's going to go well, and we appreciate our audience for joining us now. We want to start off with talking about a very famous doctor and a very wealthy doctor. I don't think he's ever seen any patients, but I've heard, and that's Dr. Fauci. You know, he has a lot of power, but he has a lot of medical. No, I'm not sure he has medical knowledge, but he has political knowledge, and he's into it again. We've had a struggle figuring out his position because not only have we called attention to a flip-flopping change in position, but others have too. You know, he says one thing one week and something different the next week. But on this, I guess he's never been right on this issue that we're going to talk about. But it's been announced by Dr. Fauci that he has to keep the people safe. And the main thing is, don't mess around with having any fun this coming weekend. I guess it's this weekend, whenever the Super Bowl comes up. So say, no parties except maybe for a couple of your close family members. And of course, I think the Super Bowl should be open, and the bigger the crowd, the better. Because one thing, Daniel, that I think I have not come across is how many people have died at professional athletic events, the ones that have been attended and sort of bent the rules. It just hasn't been a threat. But anyway, we have to have somebody make it safe and secure, and Dr. Fauci is doing that. And he's advising that we just skip it. It's like no more fun. Of course, he's tried to say, he has worked on that all along. What has he done? He has canceled Christmas and Thanksgiving and all kinds of things. You know, it made me stop and think for a minute, because I do look for short periods of time at all the TV channels just to see what the propaganda is all about. And I've noticed one thing. If there's a station that leans toward being conservative, which there's now probably about 3 in that category, then I think the personnel seem much friendlier and present themselves better, and they're not antagonistic. The more progressive you get, the more liberal you get, I've noticed they very rarely smile, and I think that is not just something I'm making up. I think the left, the progressives, who are so uptight about telling everybody how to do, since it's an impossible task, they're very unhappy people. And then I got to thinking about it. That was sort of the way it was, you know, in the Congress, that people are miserable when they take it upon themselves that they're going to save the world, and all we have to do is get the people to listen, and they get very frustrated because they're not listening to it. If they would listen to us, everything would be so much better. It has nothing to do with them and what freedom is all about. It has to do with the fact that they are experts on how to live and how to spend their money and where to be around the world. And if they don't, if the people don't do exactly what the authoritarians say, they're very annoyed, because they're trying to save the world and save the people, just like this. We can't allow them to sit in their homes. What if they had 15 people in the house and started watching a football game and started enjoying themselves? You know, that would just annoy them to no end, because they're not strictly following the rules that they have set up. So this is something that I think is an aside, but also I think Fauci is overstepping his bound. Someday the people are going to get annoyed. I think when we look at this, when we see these rules and what they put people through, I think, wow, these rules are crazy. Why do they believe that they can make a better world with all these rules that make no sense, to the point where they make no sense and they shouldn't be doing it anyway? And I think that doesn't seem to surprise me too much. I think the world's been made up of those kind of people. What surprised me under these conditions today is how many people accept it. You know, they might complain a little bit, but you know, it might be 80% of the people are still just blindly accepting, not challenging, even if they don't believe in it. They're very quiet, very obedient, and say this is necessary. They're the experts, and they know. So why except we keep reporting on where that's starting to crack and starting to break, and we'll see if anybody has a big party for the Super Bowl this year.
And it's strange because America's sort of, I mean, it's stereotypical, but there is some truth to some stereotypes. They like to fancy themselves as rugged individualists, you know, we're the can-do country. But like you say, when it comes down to something like this, kind of put their head down and say, okay, whatever you say. Let's put up that first picture to illustrate what we're talking about to start the show. And here's Fauci in his favorite place in front of a bunch of people with cameras. Now is not the time. Fauci urges against Super Bowl parties with people outside the immediate family. And here's the quote from Fauci. As much fun as it is to get together for a big Super Bowl party, now is not the time to do that. And it's exactly the same thing that he said. This is where he doesn't flip-flop. He said, as you say, about Thanksgiving, about Christmas, about New Year's. People probably by and large didn't listen to him and didn't get together for Christmas and Thanksgiving. And we see the trajectory of the cases of the disease. Nothing really big happened, just like nothing really big happened. And we have actually an article up on rawpoliceinstitute.org website. Nothing really happened in all of these super spreader events that we were warned about. There actually, the article was about 7 of them, including the Sturgis motorcycle rally. Nothing really happened. There weren't any spikes, but nevertheless, Fauci says, don't do this. Don't get together. People can make up their own minds. My guess is there are probably people that have, and I know people that have sick relatives, and they don't want to have a bunch of people coming up because they don't want to make matters worse. People are really not that stupid, I don't think. I hope they're not. But here's something else I'm going to put up this for fun, because this really reminds me of the real Dr. Fauci. So this is a joke, everybody, but let's look at the next one. This reminds me of, this is from my childhood, actually. This reminds me of Fauci, the Burgermeister Meisterburger. There will be no large gatherings, no Thanksgiving, no Christmas, and no New Year's. This is kind of what he is, and this goes along with what you say, Dr. Paul. These people seem so angry, they seem so unhappy, they seem so unpleasant, and they don't want anyone else to have any fun either.
The question I have that I haven't answered it for myself is this part of their overall strategy? Because they do have a strategy. The cultural Marxists and the radical left, they do have a strategy, and sometimes it doesn't make sense, but to them it does make sense. But then with all this, you find out, is this really their strategy, that people should be miserable and unhappy, or is this just for them an unintended consequences? And so often it's what I mentioned before, is that they just aren't following our rules. You know, it would work if they would do what we tell them to do, and that leads to this frustration. But I definitely think that people who you know, depend on others or want to be somebody else's boss are less happy. So I would say that's one of the good things about thinking about independence, self-reliance, and getting the satisfaction of taking care of oneself, rather than thinking that, oh, well, what we need is a strong government, what we need is redistribution of wealth, what we need is a whole society that ignores the fact that debt might be a problem. Debt might be a significant. Printing money might be a problem. And occupying countries around the world, it just might be a problem. But they either don't care or think it's part of their strategy, or they just put their blindfolds on. Maybe it's a combination of all three.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about Fauci last week. No harm, put on a double mask, and then a couple days later, well, there's no evidence that it does any good. You know, so he is contradicting himself. But we wanted to move on to the next topic, I think, and this is kind of in a way good news. We sniff a little bit of politics in it, but nevertheless we'll accept it. We can actually just put up that next clip, and we'll toss it over to Dr. Paul to mention. But CDC, there's a new director of the CDC, Dr. Paul, and we always listen to the CDC because we want to not get in trouble. CDC says schools can reopen even if teachers have not had the COVID vaccine. And President Biden has been very, very specific about this. I want schools to open. Well, that's a good thing, but this is an interesting story.
Yeah, it looks like there's a new director, Rochelle Walensky, and she has said some things that are not typical of somebody like Fauci. And they have a new, and there's a new coordinator, of course, for Biden, Jeffrey Zients, and he's also taking a position, says the president wants to get the schools open. But then there's always, I thought, well, I was reading the article and it sounded pretty good. I said, it sounds like the president is softening his stand. They have new people at CDC. Maybe they will neutralize what Fauci does. But then at the end, in the best part, continue with the mask, social distancing. Don't forget to wash your hands, and just on and on. And one thing they had in there for the schools that is a little scary, the ventilation systems have to be upgraded. And of course, that hasn't been proven to be the solution to this problem we're dealing with, and it's also very, very expensive. So if they're going to wait on that, then there will be somebody else that's holding it up. It certainly wouldn't be the president, because the one thing probably going for us to just back off, not that they're solving the problem, they're backing off and let the people solve the problem, is the fact that if something like that happens, there's going to be tremendous benefits from it, which we should all cheer.
Yeah.
And the question is who's going to get the credit? Well, we already know that Trump isn't even in the running. He can't get any credit. But the president currently is in the running for this, and the people who have advised the president, Trump and Biden, they have something to gain, so they will always be angling, to put themselves in a position, if it does happen, we sent out a report just in the nick of time. They've done what we told them to. Now we have the vaccine out. We finally cleaned up that mess that Trump left. We distributed the vaccine in 100 days. That's what Biden wants. In 100 days, things are looking better. Of course, we've seen some statistics where the statistics are doing a little bit better, but we think that's a more natural course of the virus.
It is interesting that some students, especially in California, they've been a whole year without setting foot in a classroom. We know, and we have known for months and months, that young people, thankfully, unlike a lot of other viruses in the past, including the 1918 flu virus, young people do not get sick, generally speaking, with this particular coronavirus. So the idea that you're saving the children by forcing them to stay at home and watch a Zoom on their computer, if the kids are lucky enough to have a computer, is just false. It's fallacious. But the teachers and the teachers union, now they really like the idea that they're able to sit at home in their pajamas and still get a full paycheck. And this is like a lot of other people who've been able to, quote, work from home and get a full paycheck, unlike the workers at the restaurants and the stores. So there's a lot of pushback from the teachers unions. We don't want to go back. We don't want to go back. And in fact, there's kind of an interesting little brouhaha brewing in Chicago. Remember Mayor Lightfoot, who was the biggest lockdown or anything. Now she is at war with the teachers union there because she's under pressure to start, things are starting to look better. Biden's in office, we have to start opening the schools, and so she's having pressure to do that. She says, we need to open the schools. The teachers union said, no way, Jose, we're not going to do it. We're going to keep staying home in our slippers. So it's interesting. So what does Lightfoot do? And I should have put a graphic. It's sort of funny, but here's a headline from some the story about it. Lightfoot blames Trump for standoff between cities, public schools, and teachers union. It's all Trump's fault, even though he's down in Florida.
Yeah, but those who are working on the new strategy, and eventually the no strategy is going to win out, things will get better, but they will still argue who gets the credit. But it will always be couched in terms, it's for the children. We have to do this for the children, and a teacher is never going to do anything that would, be harmful to the children. So, of course, they want to keep locked down. I think it's more likely for the teachers rather than the children. But that's the usual argument that comes up. And do you have anything more on that? Because I wanted to go on.
Yeah, let's turn to Congress.
Yeah, okay. We talked a little bit about Congress, about a vote coming up, which did come up. That has to do with Green, Congresswoman Green. And some people love her because she speaks out. Everybody knows she's giving her peace of mind, and from her viewpoint, she's telling the truth. Of course, from the other side, she's nothing but a troublemaker because she's not sticking to the script, and she's rocking the boat. Well, we talked a little bit about that yesterday, but they had a vote yesterday, and they brought up the Republicans have an interesting thing going on here. They had to deal with somebody they say is extreme right-winger. She actually believed in conspiracies. I tried to explain yesterday that everybody has a conspiracy. There's good ones and bad ones, and when they're bad, they're really bad, but they're never challenged. The conspiracy to go to war, that sort of thing. But so they had 2 votes, but it was in secret. So I would suggest that if people get into looking into it and they want to know what their congresswoman or congressman did, they're not going to find it on a chart because it wasn't reported. But don't you think we are still able to, without becoming, kicked off Facebook, to ask that congressperson, how did you vote? And they can not answer, or they can answer one way or the other. At least their constituents ought to know. But there's a lot of politics going on, whether it's green, because she is real strong with Trump. So the Trump people, that's one reason they probably shouldn't have to write her off, no matter how badly they have painted her. That they can't write her off because there's a lot of support out there, and Trump's not going to forget her, So she's around. But then there's another one on the other end of the spectrum, and that's Cheney, Dick Cheney's daughter. Right off, you should be suspicious there. So she was called on the carpet because she went a little bit too far. She actually said, "Out, Trump! We're impeaching you. You're a bum." And this is the thing that she did. So there's a lot of conservatives in the caucus. These were caucus votes. These were today. There'll be more in the Congress where the Democrats are going to try to kick them off their committees. But they had a vote for her. And matter of fact, I don't even know what the vote was there because it was automatic. She was approved. Maybe it was unanimous consent or something. They did not want to touch that. She's third in charge for the Republican. And, there's a chance that the Republicans might become the party in charge in 2 years from now. Well, that puts her in a very powerful position, and already it's strategically powerful. But they saved her seat. Boy, there was no saving, saying, well, yes, one way you could have rationalized with Green, saying, she was really over the top on that. Not many people really buy into all of this stuff. But what I was shocked to find out is the things that they're doing to it. It's sort of like impeaching a president after they're out of office. She said some of this stuff 3 years before she was in office and proved that she was a bad person. And yet it was speech that they're criticizing. It was a criticism of speech, which most people would have said, I wouldn't have said that. In the old days, it would have been a federal matter. But now this is a big deal.
You're right, and it's something that happened before she came in, and it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. It's certainly not anything. I know that you wouldn't do anything like this, and neither would I. But the interesting part of it is, as you say, that the House will vote on the floor today whether they will strip her of her committee assignments. And that takes away a lot. When a member is elected, they come in, they're given committee assignments, and then theoretically you're supposed to deal with appropriations for the areas that you're in the committee. But stripping her of her assignments, again, as I sort of hinted at yesterday, it's pretty interesting because the Democrats have been screaming about how evil Green and the others are for trying to overturn the election and saying that Trump was cheated. I would say this is definitely a form of overturning an election. I think this is a kind of insurrection because the people of Green's district voted for her. No one's questioning that she was voted in power, and as such, she should have all the rights and responsibilities of another member. But for something she said and did years ago, they basically clipped her wings and said, no committee assignments to sit in your office and take up knitting or something. That is really subverting the will of the people of her district in Georgia, who elected her and hired her to do the job.
They say she's challenging things by sort of supporting conspiracy theory, this kind of thing. Is not ordinary beliefs by the Republicans or anybody else. But when you think about this, and I've mentioned this several times, that they are delighted delighted to have her there if she would toe the line and support all their conspiracies.
Yeah.
You know, as a matter of fact, there are a lot of conspiracies that run our government that are bipartisan. In fact, I think they're mostly that. I think there's a lot of conspiracy with this will get me into trouble, with the Federal Reserve. But it's out in the open, and I think they're very powerful, but it's a plan. Conspiracy to me is a lot different word. It's just a plan and a goal and a political function. And Republicans and Democrats, they don't really complain about it. You could take interest rates. There was one time they were up to 21%, and now they're negative. And the Republicans and Democrats go along with it as long as the money keeps coming. So both sides want that. That to me is a conspiracy, very difficult. My guess is that she might be on the right track on the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
She's the type that might have been. But that's the whole thing. This is demagoguery at its worst, and it's a misuse of language, and therefore misuse of language done 3 years before she was endorsed by a constituency is pretty rotten as far as I'm concerned.
And the real thing here, aside from the overturning the will of the people, regardless of how you feel about Green, even if you think she is the kookiest thing that fell off the turnip truck, you're creating a dangerous situation where the majority party, with a simple majority vote, can deny the minority party seats on a committee. And if you take this to a little bit of an extreme, well, what if the Republicans recapture Congress next time? And what if they simply vote to deny any Democrat a seat on any committee? Then you'd have a committee just full of Republicans. I mean, it's certainly theoretical also. So you have this as a very serious problem. They should be careful what they do.
What do you think the odds are in the next day or two that the liberal media will come up and say, we should be fair and balanced. This is something, it's a legitimate criticism, we're making it, but we should look, are the Democrats angels? Or could they have violated some of these basic principles that they're complaining about all the time? And I think AOC was brought up in the news just recently again, and she was overstepping the bounds. And it wasn't for something she said a long time ago. It was something she said just recently, and people are very annoyed about it. And matter of fact, I was making fun of the left never doing such a thing, but I think there was a few criticisms from the left on what she did, overstepping the bounds and making a story out of where she was and how important a position she was in on January 6th.
Yeah, it was a big deal, and I think it's proven to be embarrassing for her. But as is her want, she comes back and doubles down on it. But she made this Instagram video where she was talking about the horrible trauma she suffered. She feared for her life. She knew she was going to be murdered by these horrible Trump people that were engaging in insurrection. Well, it turns out that they traced her location. She was actually in someplace we remember well, the Cannon House office building. She wasn't in the Capitol where they were these horrible insurgents were taking things over. She was over in her office, and she was cowering in fear, so she says. And I understand to a degree if there is a lot of us. We've been in situations where we've had to shelter down, shelter in place. There's a guy with a gun or whatever, and it can be confusing. So it's not to dismiss the fact that she felt uncomfortable, but she played it up so much for political gain, blaming people like Senator Ted Cruz, saying you need to resign because you're the one responsible for what I felt when I was cowering in my office. And actually, someone on the same aisle, a Republican, she tweeted and she said there were no rioters here. The Capitol Hill police were knocking to make sure we were okay. So she's taking a little bit of a hit, but as she does, and we have to thank our friend Bob Wenzel for putting this up. Listen to this next clip. Here's what she did when she was kind of busted, overstating what happened. Instead of saying, okay guys, take it easy, she sent out a fundraiser, or basically for her followers. She said she recommends that people identify any posts that are threatening or harassing and can use built-in support features to flag them for moderators. Basically what she's saying is if people go on social media and comment about the fact that I was kind of misleading when I talked about this, flag it, get them taken down, get them taken off Facebook, get them taken off Twitter. It's pretty interesting in this sort of authoritarian approach.
Sometimes it's very bewildering. Why do they bother doing it? What do they expect to gain? and some people, I guess, think they gain if they sympathize with it. I've never understood the resumes of many candidates running for office, because it's usually a candidate. They run for the office and they make up this story about being in the military.
Yeah.
Some make up stories. I can't remember the stories, but a well-known person made up a story of a real tough situation in harm's way and all this stuff. You wonder, why do they think that everybody's an idiot and even if it's true, why is that supposed to be a big deal? I'd rather find out what they believe in when it comes to the protection of personal liberties. That's what should count.
Yeah. I think that was actually Hillary. She talked about she was under fire when she was in Libya.
Oh, yeah.
Exaggerated. I'm going to just close out by just revisiting an issue that still needs some discussion. Here's a clip from the Daily Mail. If we can put this up. This is interesting. They're perplexed. Nobody knows what to do. Why are COVID cases plummeting? New infections have fallen 45% in the U.S. in the last 3 weeks. But experts say that the vaccine is not the main driver for this decrease, because only 8% of Americans have had even their first dose. Forget about the 2 doses. So they can't give credit to the vaccine. And then look at this next clip. We can see it. This is in new cases. This final clip. Here we see the 7-day average in the U.S. down 40%, 50%. Guess what? As we've been saying forever, as people like Alex Berenson have been saying on Twitter, this is what viruses do. This is a seasonal flu virus, what we're seeing here, and they always die off at this time. So the question, and I'll just close with this, Dr. Paul, the question is, now that this is happening, are they going to let go? Is Governor Abbott going to rescind his ridiculous mask order, which we saw in the chart the other day, did nothing to slow what happened in Texas? Are they going to loosen their grip on people now that this virus that they depend on for their authoritarian actions does seem to be going away, despite the scare tactics of new strains, because viruses have never mutated before. This is the first time ever. So stay tuned and see what happens as the decline continues.
Very good. What we're talking about is natural immunity, and our bodies are pretty good at handling disease, and it's a good opportunity. Even I, who at least looked at nutrition closely prior, I look at it more closely now, and I think I've learned things, and nutrition is so important, and it's a natural, and like you say, it has nothing to do with the vaccines or anything else, but still, the thing of it is, if they don't maintain their store, there's going to be a cost. Not a cost in more people getting sick or anything, but it's a dollar cost. There's a big dollar cost involved. So if this thing stops and say that natural immunity is better, and as time goes on, there's more complications, with the vaccines, there will be ultimately a cost to the prescription of medications and vaccines, and a cost in organizing and enforcing the lockdown, and there'll be a cost and embarrassment, because they're going to they should have to eat their crow, eat a lot of crow, because they've warned about the dangers. Because even in spite of the fundamental problems we have with monetary policy and spending, if we just went back to work, there would be so much improvement on this that people would be shocked to know what a little bit more freedom helped. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.